I'm Guy Anderson, the Senior Principal Analyst of Aerospace and Defence within IHS. At the moment, we're seeing the world defence market shift in a way which is unprecedented since the end of the Cold War. It's over the last 2 decades, we've seen what we call the Atlantic concentration. Defence spending has been focused on North America and Western Europe. Now that's changing. We've seen austerity in the West, and we've seen runaway economic growth in so many other corners of the world. The Middle East, Asia, Latin America, of course. And that's really reflected in defence spending. The new markets are spending more on equipment, they're asserting their authority, and increasingly they have aspirations to be defence producers themselves, that they are developing their industrial capabilities. They're not just looking to buy from us, ultimately they are looking to sell to us. The biggest shift we've seen at present is the economic growth of so many corners of the world, and that's combined with changing strategic threats. Now, if we look at the security climates from Asia to South America, now obviously they're very different regional factors, but some trends are pretty constant. Now, there's the threats insurgency, civil unrest. There we see separatist movements. Today we see very little peer-to-peer conflict, but there are still threats in the world. The world is not getting any safer. We're also seeing so many countries beyond North America and Western Europe trying to assert their new authority. They want to play a role on the global board. They are no longer satisfied with a lower tier second place position, and that's reflected in their military ambitions. They're no longer trying to project power just militarily. In fact, they're not really projecting power militarily. They're doing this economically, and defence investment is being swept along in this. The big thing for defence companies in the West at the moment is the captive markets of the past can no longer be taken for granted. Now, if we go back to the Cold War era, there were American clients, there were European clients, there were Russian clients, and there was very, very little overlap. Now that's changing. So many of the emerging markets of the world are relatively open. They're as happy to speak to Russia and China as they are to speak to Europeans. But the biggest issue for the West is our domestic markets are contracting. There are fewer opportunities. Defence companies need to satisfy their shareholders that they are continuing to grow. So that has meant export growth. They're pushing internationally. They're setting up footprints. They're setting up industrial bases in the new markets of the world. And they are all doing this. The competition is intense. We're going to see Western defence companies trip over each other in the world markets, compete with each other, and they're going after relatively fragmented opportunities. Now, historically, over the last decades, the United States accounted for something like 50 cents of every dollar spent on defence in the world market. And that has declined. So the growth elsewhere has taken up the slack, but those opportunities are greatly fragmented. It's a very difficult time for defence companies. Well, the new realities have meant that the defence companies have had to adapt to survive and to prosper. So one of the issues that we found is that so many defence companies changed their structures and their size drastically during the 2000s. Now, if we go back to the 1990s, the so-called peace dividend, defence companies merged, particularly in the United States. They consolidated to survive. This time, we've seen very large defence companies with portfolios bolstered by the boom years of the 2000s, with structures that aren't really suited to the present market. So they've been selling non-core divisions, they've been spinning off whole units, they've been splitting where necessary to satisfy shareholders, they've been buying acquisition targets in the remaining growth areas, so that could be unmanned air systems and cyber security. So the big thing is that in the 1990s, when defence spending fell, Western companies consolidated. This time, they're emerging smaller.